everyone, this is Dylan, and this is going to be another underground philosophy video. We'll be reading The Open Society and Its Enemies, which I have found a PDF of on Amazon.com. It was about $17 to get that to where I can read it on my iPad. And also, check this out. I could show it to you right here in my web browser. So we can read this together this way. And yeah, so it's wonderful that Amazon has made their Kindle available to us, and that we can read the book this way together. I will put a link to that in the comments on YouTube, or I guess in the description of the video on YouTube. But okay, so before we begin, there are a few things that I wish to address, and the thought here is that we need to make this organized, so that people can miss a live stream here and there and go find the videos they missed on YouTube easily, and also so that people have an easy time just navigating the content that we're going to be producing here. And so my thought is that if we look at the table of contents on our handy book here, what we can do is make a different video for every item here. It looks like you can't see the iPad screen. So let's switch back to the main view, and let's just come over here and get a look at the contents. And the idea is going to be that each of these things, so I'm thinking, the introduction and so on, and each chapter, the foreword, and then maybe this is 3 videos instead of just 1. Although my intention is certainly to stream these guys all together in one live stream, so that it is easy for people to just kind of turn that on and just kind of keep that going for a little bit and follow along with this if they want to. So yes, I believe the trick is going to be using the record button here in Twitch. I can end the recording without ending the stream, and so the plan is just going to be to come do a stream for a couple of hours, but use that couple of hours to make a handful of different videos, and then organize those videos according to the chapter that each is about. That should just kind of keep us on track to have an easy experience navigating through this content, and so that ought to be very good. Without further ado, then let's go ahead and get to the foreword by George Soros. And you've probably heard the name George Soros. Soros is somebody who modern-day conservatives love to hate, and he's somebody who modern-day liberals should really like, but generally I don't think they actually really know who he is or why he might be important for the most part in the mainstream. Soros was a student of Karl Popper, who became incredibly wealthy, and used his money to start an open society foundation. And so what they do is they fund a variety of different universities and charitable organizations throughout the world. I'm trying to remember the one. Well, let's actually just run a quick Google search on my phone so I can get this right. I misspoke in the first video earlier, so sorry about that. I called Bernard Williams Bertrand Russell by mistake. So my apologies. I wrote it correctly on the whiteboard. I don't know if anybody noticed, and then actually made a transcription error and put Bertrand Russell instead of Bernard Williams when I made the Word document. So that was my bad. George Soros, his open society, yes, it's called the Central European University, and it's in Hungary. So there's all kinds of interesting political dynamics with that, because Soros is somebody who the Hungarian right wing just really loves to hate, and they really like to talk about what a bad guy George Soros is. Of course, as we see with other right-wing movements these days, what they have to say about Soros is just completely inaccurate, and they've basically just made up a bunch of stuff to keep people from following the line of reasoning that George Soros puts forth with his money and with his words, as we're about to see. And that's a tradition that starts in Karl Popper and has its roots all the way in ancient philosophy. So really, when the right wing attacks George Soros, they're attacking the entire institution of organized philosophical thought. And personally, that's an issue for me. I'm not somebody who has a lot of love for people who want to dismiss philosophy out of hand for political reasons. That just seems like a bad idea. But without too much more thought about politics or anything, let's just kind of go ahead and get a start here. This is the foreword of The Open Society and Its Enemies. And it's written by George Soros. So he says, "When I first read Karl Popper's The Open Society and Its Enemies, it struck me with the force of revelation. At the time, in the late 1940s, I was an undergraduate studying at the London School of Economics. I had experienced and survived the war in my native Hungary, including the Nazi occupation and the deportation of over 400,000 of my fellow Jews to Auschwitz. When I left for England in 1947, Hungary was occupied by Stalin's Red Army and heading rapidly toward communist rule. So, I had direct experience of what Popper called closed societies, where the enforcement of the official dogma of the one-party state leads to repression and totalitarianism." I wonder if that sounds familiar to anyone today. Here in the United States, President Donald Trump has refused to concede the 2020 election to Joe Biden, who is the current president-elect and who has received over 300 electoral votes in an election, which the media has found no fraud with. The New York Times has called investigators in all 50 states who work with the election commissions there. Nobody has any evidence of fraud, and yet one of the candidates who has some significantly authoritarian and totalitarian tendencies is refusing to step down. So it's a very interesting situation and not necessarily a good one for us. But as we go through this difficult time as a nation, it is very interesting to look back at these works from the 1940s and just see, how much we have in common with the people who are writing back then. And Soros has written this introduction, obviously, in the interceding time. But looking back with him to just, what happened in World War II and what was so bad about that is one of the most interesting parts of this book, if you ask me. Okay, so he says, "And I had an immediate enthusiasm for the concept of an open society, which recognizes that human understanding is inherently imperfect and tries to build a government that allows people with different interests and ideas to live together in peace. I found a job in the financial markets, where the philosophy I absorbed from Karl Popper enabled me to develop my own interpretation of how financial markets function, which was at odds with the then prevailing dogma." So Soros became very wealthy by trading in financial markets, and he credits philosophy with that success, which is a very important observation for my own work in particular. I like to look at the various different predictions that happen when we hold views that turn out to be true. In fact, in my opinion, the definition of truth should involve predictions, and the idea behind that, obviously, is that a belief is going to turn out to be true insofar as it helps us make correct predictions about what will happen in the future, and beliefs are false with respect to how they keep us or prevent us from making true predictions about what's going to happen next. So this is fascinating stuff here. He said this allowed me to exploit the imperfections of the financial markets and made me a very successful hedge fund manager. I used my profits to set up a network of foundations called the Open Society Foundations, which were inspired by Popper's ideas. I have tried to operationalize his teaching in the work of the foundations. They operated on the principle of that critical thinking is sine qua non. This is evidenced by their focus on education and especially by the development of specialized courses that familiarize students with the concept of critical thinking. The foundations spent a lot of money on giving scholarships to deserving students. I kept in touch with Popper and was honored to spend time with him in the last year of his life. He delivered a lecture in June 1994 in Prague at the fledgling Central European University, which I am proud to have founded. I invited him to Budapest in September to mark the opening of the CEU there, but he passed away that summer. As I noted, the Open Society and its enemies had a profound effect on my thinking, but I learned even more from Popper's conjugations and refutations, and I parted company with him when he introduced the concept of a third world. Instead of a third world, I developed the concept of reflexivity, which connects the objective and subjective world in a never-ending braid. Here I was perhaps more influenced by Douglas Hofstadter's Gödel Escher Bach, An Eternal Golden Braid. Gödel Escher Bach, if you haven't read it, is actually just a phenomenal book. The concept of recursion is something that's just a fascinating thing to dive into, and Hofstadter does an excellent job in Gödel Escher Bach. It is a mammoth of a tome, and perhaps it might be a good thing for us to read here, because I haven't been able to finish it. I actually started a meetup group in Austin, Texas in about 2017 with the goal of establishing a group of people, so like a support group, right, for victims of Hofstadter's work there, because there were so many people that I did know at that time who had picked up that book and struggled to finish it. Unfortunately, it didn't work, and we never finished reading that. But it's a phenomenal book, and Hofstadter makes some amazing points, even if you don't make it quite all the way to the end. Soros says here, Popper never defined what he meant by open society because he disliked definitions. He preferred to focus on concepts and then give them a name. Ironically, the concept of open society became well known because it was the title of his book. It was just one of the possible titles and was ultimately selected by the publisher. It might be fair to say that I have placed greater weight on the concept of open society than Karl Popper did. And so Soros is a thinker who is actively working to take the concepts that he learned from his old teacher and sort of update those and make them stronger. And that's going to turn out to be one of the core concepts that Popper explores in this work, right? So what is open about an open society, at the end of the day, is that you don't actually close it off and put everything in a parenthetical or in quotes or anything that signifies an end to it. And it's envisioned to be a thing which is continually evolving. So that's a very interesting concept, and we've just gotten our first introduction there. He says the term open society was first given currency by the French philosopher Henry Bergson, who used it in his 1932 book, The Two Sources of Morality and Religion. I haven't read that one. That might be a good one for us to check out at some point too. One source was tribal and led to a closed society. The other was universal and led to an open society. Popper argued that universal ideas can also lead to a closed society if they are adopted by a one-party state. Having first-hand experience of closed societies, I strongly support his contention. This goes to show that the core idea on which Popper based his philosophy namely that our understanding of reality is inherently imperfect, is valid. Those who try to prove it wrong by claiming to be in possession of the ultimate truth are doing tremendous damage to humanity. And why is that? How could that be? Let's just take a quick second here at the end of our introduction video to think through the issue of ultimate truth with regard to the tremendous damage it can do to humanity. And so when we think about damage, when we think about harm, one of the things that comes to mind is imperfection and possibly evil and issues with the way that things are going would be another one. Possibly death or cessation or submission. And so all of these concepts that flow through our minds along with the concept of harm are concepts which reflect a loss or a lack. So the fact that we're doing this harm in the service of ultimate truth, which I think for Soros here should be in scare quotes, right? Because he's not endorsing the concept of ultimate truth. He doesn't think that that's a thing. And so ultimately, when we see this concept of ultimate truth that pops up, every time that happens, there is going to be a thread in through which lens we can understand there to have been issues. So open truth, or ultimate truth, rather than being a good thing, is actually a bad thing. It's a harmful thing. If you're convinced that you have the ultimate truth and you're impelled to include that information in your will, you just end up being an asshole. You steamroll everybody. You're bad for society. It's evil. And that's a concept that we're going to come up with here that's going to just completely permeate this work, if I recall correctly. With these books, in particular with regard to the Open Society, this is a work that I read years ago. And I mean, I was deeply moved by it. I believe I read it 3, maybe 4 times the first time I encountered it. But I haven't actually cracked it in probably at least 2 years, maybe 3 years at this point, since the first time that I read it. And so this is a thing where I have not actually gone back and gone through this. And my goal in making sure that that's what we do here in terms of underground philosophy and how we proceed is that I want to be as natural as possible. I want the viewer of this course to understand how this thing works, because I've trained myself over several courses of study over many years to be as good as I can possibly be at reading philosophy books. So I want people to be able to follow right along with me. If I need to Google a word as we're going here, I am planning to just completely include that aspect of reading these texts in these videos so that you get the full appreciation for what it is that you do when you read deeply like this. Your task isn't just to read the words that are on the page. Your task is to understand them as completely as possible using any means necessary. And my goal here is to teach you how to do that. So, alright, the first video is going to be over now. I'm going to go ahead and end the recording. So, bye YouTube. You should see a new video very, very soon. Thank you so much for watching.